Hello, history scholars. Mrs. Olson here. Today's lesson is titled France under Louis XIV. Now, previous to this lesson, we learned about Spain and their absolute monarch named Philip. And so we are going to kind of travel through different empires of the 16 and 1700s and talk about and learn about absolute monarchs. So an absolute monarch is a king or a queen that rules and nobody really helps them rule. They're not really subject to any laws except for the divine right of God. So today's lesson is about France and Louis XIV. So an X is 10, this is a 5, the V is 5, and when you put a 1 under it, you subtract 1. So this Roman numeral means a 4. So 14, so Louis XIV. Okay, the learning target reads, explain how Louis XIV became an absolute monarch. The very first thing that you are going to learn is that Louis XIV became king of France when he was only a wee little guy. So how does this wee little child become a king? Here's where we find that out. And next slide. Okay, so the next couple of slides are titled An Absolute Monarch Rises. So how does he go from being a child king to an absolute monarch that doesn't really have to listen to anybody as far as him making decisions and rules for his empire? Okay, so have a pen and paper handy or have another window open so that you can be writing and taking notes, which you then can use on the lesson questions. All right, so here goes. Louis XIV inherited the throne in 1643. So not necessarily that you have to memorize the date 1643, but you want to keep these rulers and when they became ruler in context. So the unit before this, we've been talking about the age of exploration, if you will. Now, all of those explorers were under the under kings and queens. So somebody was financing their operations to go out on these exploratory missions, and now we are talking about those people, the kings and queens, who funded these exploratory missions. Okay, so Louis XIV was 5 years old when he inherited the throne of France. Now, before this, actually, his father, the king before his father, they had these very powerful cardinals. So cardinals are men of the Catholic Church. They have positions of power, and these cardinals especially had a lot of power from their own empires and then also from the Catholic Church, and really they had been the ones running France for a while. Okay? Now, because these cardinals were using religion to rule the country, what we saw when Louis XIV inherited the throne was this uprising of nobles, merchants, peasants, and the urban poor. So urban meaning city. So the poor living in the cities, they rebelled to protest royal power, okay, because the cardinals were making it so difficult for them to survive and to prosper. Or with the case of the nobles, they are trying to preserve their own power. Okay, all right, next slide. So here I have a couple of pictures of the Sun King, as he's going to be known. This is Louis XIV when he is young, royal portraits painted of him. Okay. And the cardinal who was in power when Louis XIV was 5 is named Cardinal Mazarin. Cardinal Mazarin was the one really that was ruling France when Louis came to the throne when he was a child. Okay, so When Cardinal Mazarin dies, it's in 1661, Louis happens to be 23. So he grows up under this very powerful cardinal, which really is the one that is ruling France. When the cardinal dies, that's when Louis really takes control and vows never to let anybody else besides him rule the country, the kingdom of France. Okay? Now, he cites the divine right to rule. This is what most absolute monarchs are using to say, hey, I'm the guy, nobody else can rule my country. So the divine part means that God has given them the power, and they are like in direct line to God almost. So God has given them the absolute right to rule. He is known as the Sun King, and we are going to learn more about that in a moment, because when Louis kind of gets his throne back, if you will, from the cardinal, he takes the sun as the symbol of his absolute power. And the idea being, trying to make that little thing go away. The idea being that the sun stands in the center of the solar system, as Louis stands in the center of the kingdom or the nation of France. Hence the sun and the Sun King. All right, so here is an adult Louis portrait. And this is actually on the palace gates. We're going to be talking about the Palace of Versailles. And so this gives you an idea of his symbol, the sun, used in many places to signify his power as the divine ruler of France. Okay, more stuff. Now there is this group that has been around since the medieval times, and they're called the EstatesGeneral. And you can see the definition reads that it's a council of representatives from all social classes. So while society wasn't equal, the peasants were not equal to the nobles, the merchants were not equal to the nobles, there was this hierarchy in France, but they did have it where there was this council of people, think of it maybe like our House of Representatives, that got together and their voices were heard as far as government decisions go. Okay, so this EstatesGeneral existed before Louis came to power. Well, Louis decides, because he is the divine ruler of France, that he will not be using the services of the EstatesGeneral, and throughout his entire 72 years of ruling France, he does not call a meeting of the EstatesGeneral, not one time. Fact, from 1614 to 1789, the EstatesGeneral did not meet. So really, for this long period of French history, there's nothing in place to check royal power. And I kind of mean check in the colloquial sense, in the slang sense, in that there was nobody around, no governing type of body that said, hey Louis, hey King, you can't do that, that's not right, it's not fair. So he really did rule with an iron fist, a sun fist. All right, so I chose this graphic to show you the system that they used as far as the EstatesGeneral goes. Now, the common people, they didn't have a lot of power, but they had some power, much more than when Louis didn't call on the EstatesGeneral to meet. All right, so what does Louis do to strengthen royal power? Here we go on this slide. He appoints royal officials to collect taxes. So he's got these guys that are on the payroll, and they go out and they collect taxes for the Kingdom of France. Second thing that he does, says government jobs went to the wealthy middle class. So he wants to make sure that he has the loyalty, really, of all the different kinds of classes. And the wealthy middle class, somewhat educated, he's able to make connections with them and kind of cement their loyalty by giving them these government jobs. So that's one part of that note. The other part of the note is this part. By giving them government jobs, he's able to check the power of the nobles. So the nobles in the middle class, they are not in the same social standing, but because these guys have the government jobs, they can check these guys, the nobles. Okay, now I accidentally clicked as I was trying to move my little cursor around. The third note reads that he recruited soldiers, and what he gets out of that is the strongest army in Europe at the time. So you have a strong army. A lot of times that means that you are going to hold a lot of power in your standing in the global arena. Okay, so more notes on the soldiers of France. They were paid, they were fed, trained, and he was able to supply the country with 300,000 soldiers. That's a lot. Now, not only were they used at home, but he used them abroad. Okay? So if you need to pause, maybe I went a little bit too fast on that slide, make sure that you pause and rewind and play it over again and get what you need to get down, okay? All right, so this is just a painting that shows you his campaigns abroad and his very well-paid, fed and trained soldiers. Here's another one depicting the same idea. It's always good to have pictures in your mind of these things that we're learning about. And here we go with Colbert. Anybody watch Stephen Colbert? Well, this is not the same guy. I don't know, maybe they're related. Anyways, there is a man named JeanBaptiste Colbert who is France's finance minister. And what he does is he imposes mercantilist policies. So you have to go back a couple of lessons to remember what mercantilism means. You actually did a whole lesson on it. So I'm going to kind of go over that a little bit, like skip over it a little bit because we've done it before. Okay, but the mercantilist policies that he imposes actually helps to build up France's empire. So he helps France to make money with these kind of policies. He clears new land for farming. So he backs the builders, I know that's not the correct word, but he backs the people that want to clear land for farming. So you have more farmland in France, you have more food, you're making more money, France is making money. Okay, he encourages mining and other basic industries, so he helps to get those industries started. Once again, the more industries you have, the more money that you're making, the more taxes you can collect, the more that you can send overseas and sell, the more your country is making. Okay? And he helps to build up luxury trades like lace making. So the lace making is it's a skill that not everybody can do, and you can sell these types of products in the luxury trades for good money. Okay, and he also fosters overseas colonies. So we've been learning about the Age of Exploration. We know that the Spanish have settled in Central and South America, a little bit in North America. We know that the British had, and also the French are trying to stake their claim, especially in North America. Okay, moving on. He regulates trade with the colonies to enrich the royal treasury. So I'm hoping that there are some terms that are coming to your mind with this, like colonialism, mercantilism. I just chose this one to help you remember triangular trade. Okay, so here is the idea of triangular trade, making money in the colonies, how the mother country benefits from those goods in the colonies. Okay. And here is a map. Now, it is centralized on Britain, but it could be any of these guys, Spain, France. So I think this is actually the same one that we have used before to show you that. They're manufacturing raw products, raw materials in the New World, sending them back to Europe to be manufactured, of which the mother country makes money off of that, only to then turn around and sell it back to the people in the New World. Okay, so here we go with Versailles. Versailles is a symbol of royal power. Versailles is a building. It is a beautiful palace. Has anybody ever been there before? So Louis XIV, he spares no expense to make it the most magnificent building in Europe. And actually, your next lesson is all about the Palace of Versailles. So it's a very pretty thing to look at. So inside the Palace of Versailles, he has the finest paintings and statues. Remember, he is sparing no expense to make it the most beautiful thing ever. Chandeliers, halls that are covered with mirrors. His royal gardens are set in this very precise geometric pattern, of which you will be able to see. It's a very, very beautiful property. And it becomes the symbol of the Sun King's wealth. So here I just have a few pictures to show you what Versailles looks like now. And of course you can go visit it if you visit France. This one shows you the chandeliers, the halls covered with mirrors, the paintings on the walls and the ceilings. Here's another one to show you the opulence of the palace. Okay, his gardens that were set in the geometric pattern. All right, conducting court ceremonies. So Louis XIV perfected elaborate ceremonies that emphasized his importance. Let me tell you about that a little bit more. He had these rituals that he would do every single day, morning and night, and part of it was to gain the favor of the nobles. So there was this ritual that he called a levee. And a levee was somebody helping him to get ready in the morning, for example. So he would curry favor of a certain noble, for example. That noble would be in his bedroom in the morning, handing him his pants, his boots, his sword, all of those kinds of things. And it was like the nobles were fighting over each other to try to be part of this ritual with Louis XIV. So he did this in the morning and in the evenings. So by doing that, he kind of grants them these privileges, and then because they are serving him at court, this one says that the tactic, these rituals that he kind of lured them to court with, worked because he protected their prestige, being a noble, and then he also gave them the privilege of not paying taxes. Okay. So at the bottom of this, if this would go away, whoops, hold on one second, guys, sorry. All right, I think I got it. So the bottom of this reads that it's bedchamber etiquette. And so what you see here is Louis XIV getting ready. It could be morning or night, I'm not really sure, but these are noblemen who are putting on boots for Louis, and they kind of fought each other in order to be the person to put on Louis's boots, for example. Okay, here's the word levee, Louis XIV's levee. So here they are in his bedroom, helping him to get ready in the morning. And we're coming to the end here, patronizing the arts. So the classical age of French drama really flourished under, I'll move me, Louis XIV. Okay? Whoops. This one says that painting, music, architecture, and decorative arts. So think about like a furniture and how you decorate a house. Decorative arts became the model for all of Europe. So the Palace of Versailles is under construction. Louis keeps adding on, making it even more beautiful. Think of the Palace of Versailles as, and everything that's going on in it, as the model that everybody wants to copy in Europe. Okay? A new form of dance, drama, ballet gained popularity at French French court, and Louis actually is a great supporter of the arts and sciences, and he sponsors this French academy who has really these high standards in their school for the arts and sciences. Okay. So here's an example of the decorative arts, Louis XIV's bedroom that everybody was trying to copy in Europe. Louis XIV furniture, which I know may not seem very interesting, but I wanted to give you an idea of these decorative arts that were popular during the time. Okay, and now we have the French Empire under Louis XIV. It starts to decline, and we need to figure out why. Okay, so Louis XIV, even though we've been talking about some other things, he pours vast resources, so vast meaning a lot, wide, resources meaning money, into wars that were meant to expand French borders. So, of course, he's like any other monarch or any other powerful leader. They always want to gain more and more territory. Now, he does that, and he does that. Okay, that's the end of that sentence. Okay. So this is kind of a long one, but it gives you an idea of what I'm meaning by that, okay? It says in 1700, Louis's grandson is named Philip V. He inherits the throne of Spain, okay? Now, without going into that whole long story, just know that Louis's grandson, who is French, inherits the throne of Spain. To maintain a balance of power, neighboring nations led by England fought to prevent the union of France and Spain. So had Philip V inherited the throne of Spain, like originally intended, that would have made France and Spain the same country, if you will, hence France being that much larger. But this war, it dragged on for 13 years when France finally signed a treaty, okay? And so what they agreed to was that Philip would remain on the throne of Spain, but France agreed never to unite the two crowns because the powers that be that in Europe, they don't want it to be this humongous empire. They want this balance of power, okay? Continuing on about the strong state of France declining, there's 100,000 Huguenots that flee France because Louis sees them as a threat to religious and political unity. So think of them as a group that have these political and religious ideas that are that are different than Louis, and he essentially persecutes them. And so instead of living in this state where they're in this constant persecution, they actually leave. And when they leave, they create this deficit, if you will, in French society because they are among the hardest working and most prosperous, meaning making the most money of Louis's subjects in his kingdom. Okay? So this is just a map that shows you France and where these Huguenots went to. 10,000 to America, 10,000 to Ireland, 40 to 50,000 to England, and so on. You can pause it if you want to keep looking at the other side, okay? Here is a settlement marker in the United States, and you can pause that to read it a little bit more. Virginia Colony, okay? And I said this earlier, but you do want to know that Louis was one of the longest running rulers of European absolute monarchs. He ruled for 72 years. And at the end of Louis's reign, France was the strongest state in Europe. So as far as a strong state declines, what you want to remember are the precedents, the decisions that Louis set in his 72 years after he's gone. It actually it makes the state of France suffer because of those decisions. So some of Louis's decisions eventually caused France's prosperity to erode, but that's a story for another day. Okay. That is the end of the lesson. Make sure you take good notes, or you took good notes, because you can use them on the lesson questions. Hope you guys learned a bunch. Bye!